Welcome to the Madison Park Podcast. We're so glad that you're here. Join us each week as we recap messages, share funny stories, and take a deeper look at what God's doing in our community. If you have a moment, check us out at madisonpark.church.
Hey everybody, welcome to week 2 of the Madison Park Podcast. We're super excited that you're here with us. If this is your first time with us, welcome. We're really excited that you're here. All this is sort of taking a deeper look at what God's doing at our church and the community at large. And so I'm really excited today. We're talking about groups. And so I have Ben Hodge with me. You know, he's on staff. I'm really excited about what God's been doing in his heart. And so today, that's sort of like the foundation of what we're talking about. So I think probably the best place to start is, so what do you see right now on the horizon for groups? Because I know we've talked a little bit, and it's the word group even like has a connotation of a certain thing. And so like maybe taking a moment to sort of redefine what is a group, at least in the context of what we're talking about and what we're stepping into.
Yeah, so I mean, we've had lots of conversations, lots of different things have happened just as we've watched different churches and communities come together and do life and all of that. And so this really has been just a journey of trying to discern what the Lord wants to do, not just here at Madison Park, but in the church at large with his people. And so when we talk about groups, really we're talking about communities, which has been one of the shifts that we've started to make here, is calling them community groups, and not just groups. We want it to be people doing life together, where they're rubbing shoulders, they're in the easy and the good of life together, but they're also in the hard and the dirty, the messy stuff. And so, we look at scripture and we see Jesus doing life with 12 people. Most of the time he's with the 12. And so that's really, as we're looking at moving into the future, really we're looking at creating spaces that are intentional and relational for people, with groups that are around that size. We think, you don't want to separate, we don't want to separate the methods of Jesus from the message. So just being intentional to follow what we think scripture is really clearly laid out when it comes to how we do discipleship formation and groups and communities and all that.
Yeah. I was thinking like, so Ben and I are married to sisters. We've been in several groups together. I'm thinking about some small group horror stories of like, do you know what I'm thinking about right now? Maybe.
There's probably a few of them.
Do you have one?
Oh man. I'm curious which one.
So a few years ago, all of these names have been changed and personal information redacted, so no one would feel embarrassed. We had we started a small group, and I want to say there were 5 or 6 families, and for whatever reason we really wanted our kids to be there with us, like not in the discussion time or whatever, but like on the same property. I think part of that was like so we could share a babysitter. I don't really remember. And so we hosted it, and our daughter came up and had permanent marker all across the side of her face. There's a table that was broken. Somebody had like clogged the toilet. It was like this horror scene, like someone was, trying to escape. And we're all cool with that, like totally fine. And then we had just gotten new carpet, and we had everybody take their shoes off, and the kids ran outside and ran back in and just tracked mud. And I just remember the look of just total shock of like, you clogged the toilet, you drew on our daughter's face. Like, this is not okay. And, you know, we, of course, paid the babysitter, but then, like, cried. We're like, should we do this?
Those are the things that make you not want to
Join the group.
join a group.
Yeah. Do you have a horror story? Or
I mean, I think back, like before Anna and I even got married.
Oh boy.
And was in a group in a church in Nashville, and we always met at one of the girls' houses, and there were just so many things when you're new out of college.
Yeah.
And you're in a group like that where I feel like there were several moments that we got into some pretty intense arguments over things that didn't even matter. It was probably like, where are we going to order pizza from or something?
Right.
That's like, why are we fighting about this? But no, I mean, I think that, again, that's like the messiness of agreeing to do life with people.
Yeah.
Is that it's just some moments are great, and other moments you're like, I don't think I want to do this anymore.
Yeah. I totally get that. One like side note, if you're watching this on video and it looks like I broke my neck, I slept on it funny, and I legitimately can't turn my neck right now. So gotta love that. So like, I'd be curious, and I'm asking this mostly for like the viewer's sake, because I know a lot of that story, but I feel like the last year, and probably, if I'm being like actually thinking about it, probably more like 3 years, God's had you on this journey about what the term spiritual formation really means. Mm-hmm. So I'd be curious, like personally, what has that journey been? And then ultimately tying that into like what a group or a, these community things that we're putting together, like how that all ties in. So I feel like that's such a cool piece of the journey God's had you on, and how that's sort of playing out.
Yeah.
Ultimately as groups.
Yeah, it probably has been 3 years. I'm sure if I step back farther from it, it's probably been longer than that.
Sure.
I think everything that we experience or go through is a part of the Lord forming us for different seasons of life.
Yeah.
But the last 3 years especially has been really formative in that space. Being on staff at different churches and seeing things from a distance and being in the weeds of it, behind the curtain, so to speak.
Yeah.
You start to see things differently, and it's easy, especially in ministry, to like just get stuck in doing.
Yeah.
And I found myself, we've traveled a ton. We've been in so many different churches and spaces and worship environments and cultures, and rubbed shoulders with different people. And I started to see this disconnect in what we were doing and how that was forming people, like the language that it was giving them for conversation or for things that they were experiencing with the Lord or personally or whatever. And so just started to kind of go down a bunch of different rabbit holes, reading materials, looking at scripture, started following a couple other churches who have been, have had a really big impact, I would say, in the formational space. John Mark and Bridgetown and Tyler Staton and those guys have been a big part of that. But just really the Lord started doing something in me of trying to honor the process of becoming.
Yeah.
And what that means, what that looks like. I think it didn't even probably start with formation stuff, honestly. It probably started with, I think, when we were going through the widget of like understanding more of myself, how do I operate in an organizational sense, which led to, why do I do that? How did the Lord make me? What giftings did he give me? And why do I do those things? And how do I take all of that information then and pursue the presence of the Lord in an honest way, both individually and communally? And so when you look at it from that perspective, and you start to look at just discipleship and formation at large, I was actually talking about this with somebody yesterday. I don't think that you can actually grow in discipleship, in formation, in your grow up in spiritual maturity without community.
Sure.
I don't. I actually don't believe that it's possible. I think you end up hitting a certain ceiling or a limit.
Yeah.
Without other people around you to encourage you and to call things out, or to call you out. Some of the stuff that is not like Jesus. And so that's a short version. It's been a long journey and a process, but one that's been really fun to walk through and unpack.
Yeah. I'd be curious, like sort of distilling that down. I think there were a couple things in there that are just like sort of remarkable. One is like the baseline idea is that, number one, God is never done with you.
Yeah.
It isn't like there's sort of, you arrive at this point of like, I fully realized the potential that God has in my life. So I think like that's a thing that I've been surprised as I've heard you talk to people and we've spoken with you about it. Like, I think people are genuinely sometimes feel like, I got saved, I go to church, like that's it. And like even the nuance in that of like the spiritual formation is really this idea of cultivating a deeper relationship with the Lord, just like you would with any friendship. And so like friendship happens like in not only one-on-one coffees or whatever, but in bigger spaces. And so I think that's like that realization is big. The other part is, I think I've recognized over the last couple of years, and again, like you and I've talked about this, these conversations that happen in the lobby, that you start to realize people are asking, well, what do I do now?
Yeah.
And I think as the church has sort of grown, like the Big C church, not just Madison Park, but just as the church has grown, we've sort of lost the art of helping develop people, especially in the beginning, in the relationship with the Lord. But honestly, I mean, you know, I've had these points in my life, and even this last season, you know, where it's like I kind of hit this wall, or maybe something changes in your life where it's like you're really challenged about like how do I pursue the Lord in this season? And there's something special that happens in community in that way. And so I think for me, like obviously our relationship has been life-changing, but having community and building that and making that like a prime focus of what we do. And so I think the cool part, what I'm excited about is the way you're approaching groups isn't about like, hey, if you just got baptized, join a group. It's like, hey, we all are growing.
Yeah.
And there's something to be learned kind of from everybody, and we can do that together. And so God's not done with you. And there's something, I think for me, because I'm approaching middle age very quickly. I don't even know when is middle age.
I think that I'm pretty sure that we're there. I don't know if we're I think we're there.
It's nice to know that like there's still depth. There's still places to go. You know, and in some ways I feel like I've just scratched the surface of it.
Yeah, I think it's, you know, a lot of what the church has done, not Madison Park, but Big C Church, is the idea of groups is very programmatic. It's like, this is when we're going to launch this thing. You sign up for it and you do it and you check the box for X number of weeks.
Yeah.
And do the thing. And I'm hoping that we're able to not look at it, that we're able to take a more holistic approach at how we view it, how we do it, how we operate within it, that it's not a program to execute or to do, but it is a community to be a part of.
Yeah.
It's life to do with other people. And so I think, I mean, again, we've kind of taken discipleship in the church and distilled it down to like, oh, well, you accept Jesus, you get baptized, and then you serve or you give. Yeah. And that's like, you've made it. You've arrived as a Christ follower. And, that's not what was intended, obviously, in Scripture. And so I hope that, my hope and the goal really is to get people to move closer to being this idea of being with Jesus, becoming like him, and doing what he did, making disciples. So, I'm excited about where it's headed in the process.
I've been trying to think of an analogy, because that's how my brain works. You know that. But I think sometimes we treat like, imagine like a meal, okay? So like a dinner. And imagine like maybe steak, right? So if you have a steak dinner, you have like the star of that show, of that plate, is the steak, right? And then everything else is sort of like secondary and auxiliary to that, if you will. So it's like, awesome, we get the steak. And then you have like, asparagus. And in some ways, I think the approach of the church has been like, the steak, like the thing, is Sunday morning. Yeah. Or even like, and this could be a little touchy, but maybe it's like your salvation moment is like, that's the crux. And everything else is sort of like auxiliary to that. What I like about what you're building is it's really more like pasta, where like all of these things sort of combine to the reality of like what it means to follow Jesus. So like you can't have pasta without like sauce and noodles and probably cheese or some. And so like what I love about this whole small group thing is it's really a shift away from like, hey, groups, and the idea of groups was sort of this auxiliary thing, like, oh, now you're part of it, well, here's this other thing you can be a part of, where it's like, no, like when you're a part of a community, the church is people, right? So it's not a building. When you're a part of that, like that is a piece of the main entree. Having just dry spaghetti would be horrible. You want some sauce, right? So like Sunday might be the like pasta part of it, but groups, and that is like the sauce on it, and serving is like the cheese or whatever. But it's not, these things are not broken apart and one greater than the other. The shift is really like being in community with people is as important as Sunday. Yeah. Which is as important as your time with the Lord, which is as important that you're serving or tithing or whatever. And maybe they're not all weighted different. Like you don't want the same amount of cheese and noodles. Is this working?
I think it's working. Yes. Yes. I think it does work. I mean, you're right. It is not a like one thing is more important than the other.
Yes.
It's all critical to our formation as individuals. I mean, even as you're saying that, I'm thinking, if we take the idea of community outside of the church, right, just relationship, like we were created for relationships. Yeah. And so it doesn't matter if you are a part of the church body or not, the importance and the value that community plays, the role that it plays in somebody's life is huge. I mean, think about, we have 3 kids. You guys have 3 kids. Yep. When you have a baby, the thought of doing that, experiencing it, going through it the first few days and weeks by yourself, with nobody around you, looking back, you're like, I don't know that we could have done it without the community around us. Yeah. So I think being able to have people like that in your life, regardless of where they are and life stage and all of that kind of stuff is, I mean, it's huge.
Well, and that's a great sort of way to look at it. I'm thinking about like my oldest daughter who just joined a softball team and watching how much, like, not that it's about speed, but how much faster she grows in understanding the game of softball and developing the skills by watching what other people are going through and being able to help them and there's something like really special there. And so I think what I'm really intrigued by is like, we're not saying, hey, if you want to join a group, you should do that. It's like part of walking with Jesus is feeling sort of the urgency to like have community. I know, I think that's probably a really good segue into like, you've kind of like made 3 sort of hallmarks of spiritual formation. Do you want to talk about those in relation to how that factors in with groups?
You're referring to the like become like, So again, the core idea, foundation, the kind of building blocks, or the pursuit, I guess we could say, is to be with Jesus, to become like him, and to do what he did. I mean, we look at so many of the different discipleship or formation practices or programs or different things, and they're all to that end. You look at Jesus as he says, follow me, and then gives the command to go and make disciples, commanding them, teaching them to obey everything that I have commanded. And so really you can do those things. They're all individual. Like, you can do them by yourself. You can put them into practice by yourself. You can pursue being with Jesus by yourself through prayer, through reading the word, through just sitting, silence and stuff. There's a number of practices that we could get into. But you can also do that. You find Jesus in community with people. I think I've had several conversations recently just about, again, parenting or marriage and how those relationships give you a new perspective, a new picture of who Christ is, who Jesus is.
Totally.
And community is similar in that. And so, and then becoming like Jesus, that happens the more that you spend time with him, the more that you start to become like him and are shaped more into his character and start to express more of the fruit of the Spirit. And part of that is like the sandpaper, so to speak, of community. You know, when Anna and I were getting married, our counselor said that marriage is kind of like sandpaper for each, which sounds really terrible when you say it like that, doesn't it?
It does.
But it's so true, where the things that are maybe my rough areas are smoothed out by the sandpaper of the things that the other person brings into the marriage or the relationship. And so community is similar, where you can kind of refine some of those spaces in your life. And then obviously doing what Jesus did is not just executing a task. Right. It really ultimately is about discipleship, about making disciples who make disciples. But we can do that in the context of community with people.
That's cool. Well, and I think it's such a beautiful segue, and that is awesome.
Sorry about that.
Sure. No. I think it is a beautiful thing, especially coming out of the Pressure series, where one of the big takeaways, because Heather and Kelsey both talked about it, like the idea of having community in times of like pressure. And so I think as much as, like, I guess acknowledging the reality of like being in a group is hard.
Yes.
Like, it just is. And I know for me, like, and again, like being candid, a lot of times, like, we work at a church we're at the church a lot. And so sometimes groups are like, that's maybe one of the hardest things for me to do.
Yeah.
And like acknowledging to everybody out there, being in a group is hard. But as much as it's difficult, there's this beauty and this support and this other thing that comes from it.
Yeah.
That not only like spurs you on like closer to the Lord and develops that, like that's all good, but it also gives you this beautiful sort of safety net, and this thing that refines you. So I'm really excited about that. So this weekend we are sort of launching, I don't know, is that the right word? We're opening signups for groups.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about that a little bit, like of how that process works, and then maybe anything that would be helpful for people to hear?
Yeah. So Sunday we'll launch the kind of kickoff for the group stuff, like you said. So for the next 2 weeks, really, we'll have that available. People can sign up or request to join a group. You can see all of that on the website. You can text groups to 40727 to get signed up. All the things through the Church Center app, whatever. It's kind of everywhere for a purpose, so that we can make it accessible and easy for people to get plugged in.
Mm-hmm.
But really, the idea again is to just find a community and to do life with people. It's all of the groups for this go around are going to be sermon based, so we're not specifically unpacking every word that comes from the stage. So it's not like, well, these are the notes from Heather or Kelsey or Ben or Stephen. This is it's unpacking the scripture, the big idea, the theme from the weekend, and really understanding kind of from 3 different perspectives how we understand it and how we apply it.
Yeah.
So it goes beyond just like, reading the scripture and filling out a piece of paper and whatever. It's trying to be more intentional with, again, understanding like what's actually being said here in scripture.
Yeah.
How does that impact us personally? And then how do we maybe apply that in our world, in our reality, in our context at home, at school, at work, all that kind of stuff. And then creating spaces where we can be honest with the people around us and pray with each other. I think, for us, those have been some of the pivotal moments in for sure our relationship or our the time that we've known each other. Like the times that I can go, man, this really stinks. Like I hate whatever is happening right now. I'd love to not happen ever. And you can go,
fair enough. Yeah.
Have you thought about it this way? Or, man, I'm really sorry that's happening. Can I pray for you? Like to have people around you that are in your corner. Yeah. That when you say something that maybe sounds stupid to you or makes you feel a certain way, somebody else doesn't make you feel that way.
Yeah.
So just have people that you can laugh with, that you can get in a fight with and still love. And, will love you. And I just think there's so much value that we miss. And like you said, it's the hurdle of just saying yes to being in community is almost as big, if not bigger, than the actual like being in community. Yeah. But it is it's a discipline, and it's the benefit far outweighs the like immediate pain maybe or tension that you feel in it. So
and it's interesting too. I didn't really think about. I didn't have this thought till now. Surprise. But like we were talking that we are statistically like one of the loneliest and one of the loneliest times in history, yet the most like connection. Yeah. And so I think the funny part is we're like thirsty for a relationship. But we refuse to like take a drink of it. You know what I mean? So I think the challenge, like straight from what you said, is like there's not only a call, but I think deep down there's this reality that we want relationship. And so I think I'm excited for what lays ahead. I think my biggest ask, and probably yours, is like, let's try this, like as a church, like let's do this. And so, yeah.
And my request, I'll say it that way, to our group leader right now has been, like, I know that this is new.
Yeah.
Like, I know, Madison Park specifically, we've been through a lot of changes. There's been a lot of shifts and things that we've done.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is another new, to a certain degree. It's not extreme, but it is new and different. And so, my posture is very open.
Yeah.
I believe in what this offers us as a community and what we can gain from it. And so my request again has just been like, let's pursue the Lord together. Let's just be open. Let's ask the questions. Let's engage in it together in an honest way and just see what God might want to do through it. Yeah,
that's cool. I'm super excited. And so yeah, if you're interested, if you're listening to this, you can check out the website. All of that is actually done through Church Center.
Yeah.
So if you have the app, you can also check it out there. But you can also text the word groups to 40727, and that'll get you plugged in. Again, most of that is going live this Sunday, which is September 15th. We're really excited about it. So anyway, thanks for joining us. We will talk to you guys. We'll be back here next week with something else, which will be cool. Anyway.
Excited to see what it is.
Yeah. Me too. Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much for joining us. For more information, find us on socials or visit madisonpark.church. We'll see you next week.